Welcome to the Passionate Pioneer podcast. Hi, I'm Beth, and I'm passionate about supporting women who are feeling disillusioned and disappointed with their career and showing them what is possible when you follow your passion. Having your voice heard, finding your tribe of like minds, and being able to get support is so important when you don't know where to turn or who to talk to. I transformed my life from the corporate world to the coaching world, and I now empower women to follow my example and claim the freedom of choice to follow their heart, soul, and passion. So let's get started. Today, I am joined by Marcia Gladwin. Marcia's energetic skills developed very early in her life. Growing up in the wilds of Derbyshire, she was always immersed in nature and involved with the rangers and mountain rescue. It's no wonder that she connected with nature spirits and the elementals, and at the age of 12 started going to a spiritual church where she developed her intuition and psychic abilities and combined them with psychology and creative visualization. She continued this lifelong passion of body therapy, energy and health at college, which also included massages, crystals and aromatherapy, as well as a variety of other Eastern philosophies linking to body health. From athletes to CEOs, Marcia has helped many professionals around the world to connect with their bodies, energy and intuition with amazing results. She also works with female inmates in prisons to support them in all areas of their lives. She intends to step into full-time entrepreneurship very soon to follow her passion on her own terms. Welcome, Marcia.
What a lovely intro. It's just so interesting looking back through your career and coming full circle. I just got invited back to Spiritualist Church. I was there last night actually, doing readings. So it's funny how these rhythms and flavors and influences run through your life, isn't it?
Yeah, it's amazing. I mean, the information, about your life, it's just, what a varied, adventurous life you've had, Miss Marcia.
Thank you. Long may it continue.
So let's go back to the wilds of Derbyshire and how you got immersed with this, with the nature spirits and the elementals. How did all of this spirituality journey start for you?
Well, it was one of those things. So I grew up and born in Sheffield originally, and my mum and dad got divorced. And it wasn't an easy childhood, which, we have those childhoods that create our gifts and talents, but also our wounds and challenges at the same time. My mum had a saying of everything's got a back and a front. So I'd learned very early, my dad was not an easy person. So I'd learned very early to perceive what mood he was going to come in, how it was going to be. And so, interestingly, my mom had gone looking. She was very, very entrepreneurial. She would have been amazing on your podcast, Beth. She was one of the leading manageresses in the 70s for Tupperware and children's parties. But when you get divorced in the 70s, you're not caliber for those so-called wholesome businesses. And so she'd gone out looking for another business, and a cafe at Longshore Estate, which is on a National Trust land, had come up, and she'd ended up having a conversation with the lady, and it was obvious that the marriage was not in a great place. And so just about how things connect. So the lady who was offering her the cafe rewrote the tenancy, because back in the 70s men had to sign everything, and so she rewrote the tenancy agreement to include the flat, and that's how we got to leave my dad. So going out into the wilds of countryside, I was 4-5 years old, something like that, kind of a little bit traumatized from my childhood. So I wasn't speaking, and quite shy anyway. So being out in nature in this 15th century Duke of Rutland's hunting lodge, we were in the turret flat and nature everywhere,
Wow.
still the same, not very much change, and it's been like that for centuries. And so working with the rangers who would take you out and look at this, and then, the mountain rescue team, and my best friend of the time, who runs Parson House Farm. Her parents ran it, which was an outdoor pursuit center. So I was kayaking, I was mountain climbing. But what is different about growing up in the wilds of somewhere is everybody has a different perspective on land. So, the farmers would say, oh, right, it's going to snow in 2 hours. And I'd be ridiculous,
Yeah.
bright sunshine. And you would know it would happen. Or they'd say, oh, look at this berry. And you'd be going, what berry? And then they'd say, oh, this means this. And so this using the land and the environment to create community, because everybody came together in the snow to dig everything out, but also the perceptive skills of people who are familiar with the land. It's like anybody familiar with business and entrenched. And my mum was always very, very intuitive and clairvoyant. My dad was very kind of instinctive. So that was in our background without it being so openly known. I think, Sheffield can be quite an intuitive place anyway. So, my mum was always about, let's go out and be with the land, and just having that sense of nature spirits, and just being immersed in the land. You started to develop, for me, just different ways of working with the land. So the rangers, there was a whole crowd of us kids. So there was one ranger at that time, and this is Longshore Estate in Derbyshire. And so he worked out that he got this crowd of kids, me and my older brothers and other people, that would go and do stuff. So the tunnels that were blocked, we'd be in there with our wellies clearing everything. So we got to learn about conservation and land and what was happening, as well as when you're in a quiet and grounded, we're always in the earth. What's available to you opens up. So that between 4 and 12, going to a village school where if you finished your English and maths, we got to do a nature walk, or we got to do this. So very early on, the practicalities of, my granddad was a carpenter and the other one was a steel worker. So the weaving of being grounded and systematic, cooking, all of that with this intuitive and just other realms was there very early on.
That's
And
incredible. So
yeah,
what an incredible way to grow up. You finish your classes and you just go for a nature walk, and and the way that you describe nature, it's it's an intrinsic part of our life. It's part of our wellness journey. The spirituality, is not all just sitting cross-legged and just meditating. It's just encompasses so much more, right? And nature is a big part of that, Marcia, right?
and also the being not separated. So growing up in countryside, you don't just go, I'm going to get a blanket and I'm going to meditate. There is times when that's done, but it's running along real life. The snow is here, schools closed, we're digging drives. The heat wave of 1976, the fires, everybody was out, community beating, kids everywhere. So the kind of purposefulness, and our head teacher was quite incredible. It was the 70s, showing my age.
I totally with you, because I remember that, the heat wave of 76. I was like, I totally remember that. Yes.
Yeah.
And the sense of community in the 70s, it was a lot stronger than it is now, right?
Especially in Derbyshire, because it's survival. So our head teacher was very progressive about language. So I remember his wife teaching English and saying, if you can pick out 3 romantic words from this poem, then we can go out and do this. So he had a way of sharpening your skills, because it was like reward, and celebration. So if you can do this, we'll play ball games. And so I had such a great grounding in values about people, about community. And then we moved back into Sheffield because my brothers were older. So, you know, jobs and things like that. And how really my mom was amazing at living on her own terms and living in real life. So to leave my dad, she got 3 other jobs, working in pubs and cleaning and stuff, but also so she could be with us when she wanted to be with us. So I learned that very early on, how you can have your passion and your love and make the most incredible things happen, as well as run life of realities. You've got to work, you know, you've got to work in a certain way. So then we moved back into, you know, Sheffield town centre. And again, my mum, just such a visionary, knew that I would hate going to a certain school. I've been in a village school that's got 75 people from reception upwards, and then going back into the town centre, no. So she got me into Aberdale Grange, which had got massive fields. It just come out of a grammar school, so passion about exams. Seb Coe went to my school. And so
Really?
there, what happened for me is I read Shakti Gwain's Creative Visualisation, but I was also doing a lot of sport. So I'd done sport at junior school, but also coming back into the city. You know, it was nice where we lived, but there wasn't the wilds of nowhere around, so the noise. So I put together Shakti Gwain's Creative Visualisation and also sports psychology. There was a lot, it was the Olympics. So I still can't remember if it's Jimmy Connors or Bjorn Borg or Melcash, somebody said that they didn't see a net in tennis, they saw a wall. So they would get these shots because they were looking at the world differently. You know, where could it go? So I started to put creative visualization, being in nature, and, you know, the sports stuff together. So all the kids that were being bullied would come and be on my sports team. I got made captains of team. And so I taught them how to do this stuff. It's also
visualization. That's incredible, right? It's such a, in those days as well, it's such a young age, right?
But also it was, for me, you know, a big part of my work is that intuition and psychic ability, we all have it. We're all healers.
Yep.
But the groundedness of application. So it's not just, okay, I'm doing yoga now and I'm intuitive and then I'm an entrepreneur. And then it's like how those threads all come together,
Right.
like our body systems. So I got notice, and then I worked out, okay, if somebody's already written an exam. So I'd start tuning into what the exams were going to be like, and I'd get really predictive and fantastic. So the next bit was that I was doing work experience, and, you know, it's the miners' strike. It's 84. It's the miners' strike in Sheffield, which was huge. You know, the government going on. There was all this unrest, and, you know, 16 is a ridiculous age to pick your future career.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
I was in a work experience hairdresser, and I did so well that I got to go to a show, an exhibition in London. And this is what I'm talking about listening to the threads and the whispers, like the land people taught me.
Yeah.
So I went down there and to this exhibition. It was massive, you know, and I found a little side corridor, and there was this sign saying shiatsu. What's shiatsu? And I went in there, and this guy was demonstrating shiatsu, which is a Japanese type acupressure massage done clothed.
Right.
And I just started with scoliosis, a curved spine. I was 15, and I thought this is going to affect my sport. But just went in there and very shy. And he was asking for volunteers. So that my hand was up. And for the first time, my body didn't hurt, you know, and wasn't restricted. And so this guy was talking my philosophy, because he was talking about Eastern philosophy and, you know, spiritualism, but in a grounded way. So he was talking about, well, there's pollution in London. You've got to deal with it. You can't close it out. It's part of it. Embrace it. And later on, I was blessed enough to train with him. He was actually Rex LaSalle. Still love him. Still going. He's still doing shiatsu treatments in his 70s and 80s or whatever he is.
Wow.
But he overthrew the Trinidadian government for Black Power in the 70s. So he got that backbone that I was brought up with, but also was doing things. So instead of, going insane, he was in a tiny cell. He was doing beetle things. He developed all sorts of stuff. And just such an amazing person. So that was it. So you can imagine, go back after work experience. Marcia, what do you want to do? I want to be a shiatsu practitioner.
Right, of course, right, yeah.
That's what made the choice. Talk about crossroads. Yeah. Either to do physio, to do English, because I loved language and I still do, or to go into beauty therapy. And at that time, physio was too complex for me. So I ended up going into beauty therapy college that did hair and beauty massage and moving to Nottingham. So then the next stage happened where I started to learn about crystals. And again, there's I'm realizing as I speak to you, Beth, this groundedness of the tutors. I've just got back in touch with another one of my tutors, where there was this grounded practicality and science behind how aromatherapy was working and massage worked and what happened in the body, as well as the kind of esoteric, innate ability within that. So I started working with, transgender in, I don't know, it was like 1990, and people with different marginalized areas, alcoholics and just like all sorts of stuff. And each time just something else would appear. So that NLP showed up in my life, neuro linguistic programming.
I call that just following the breadcrumbs, right? It's just the little nuggets from the universe, right? How everything just synchronizes in, right? When you're going the right way, everything just falls into your lap on the way, right? It just happens.
I think it's cake. I think it's cake pieces, not just bread cake.
Cake pieces.
Yeah. So then, again, just following those things. So I moved down to London, interested that I could talk about synchronicities and learn so many different things about what the body tells you, what it holds. And all the worlds kept coming together for me. So feng shui and space clearing, which are about your house, your body. I studied shamanism. And so for me, looking at how the brain worked, how the body works, how the energetics work, and then what else is possible. So I started teaching massage when I was in my early 20s. And I was very blessed to get into, in the 90s, in working in London, I was working with diplomats. I worked with one of the clients that brokered the first peace deal in the 90s in Palestine, and Israel was one of my clients. So working with people that were dealing with this trauma and this, having to sit with people like Yasser Arafat to do a deal, and your own personal stuff coming up and what was happening at home. So very early on, this is how my career came, of dealing with people's darkness and pain and trauma, and also the vision of where they were going. So Cindy Crawford was a client of mine, and just lots of talented people that were juggling who they were on stage and in the world and getting a message out, just like yourself, Beth. I mean, we've worked together, we've been friends for a long time, but we've worked together for this. And so, bringing all of those worlds together, where yourself from our wonderful thing at New Year that came to this
yes,
podcast.
Absolutely. So Marcia's just talking now about she held a workshop in New Year's Eve going into this year 2023, and I was invited, and I was so humbled to be invited. I was like, oh, I'm invited. And yes, it was incredible, right? And some of the things that came out were, as we know, about my voice, and how can I get my voice out there, Marcia? Oh, look, here I am.
Cake pieces later. That's so, right. This incredible journey, which is still what I do, whether it's what I'm doing in the prison or doing with clients worldwide, is looking at what's possible and what's in the way. And when I do it, I go back to being that child in the wilds of nature, where you've got the nature elements, you've got the rangers going, watch the weather, be prepared. You've got the mountain rescuers who are, you know, tracking someone lost. And although their innate or their tacit skills of understanding the land, there was definitely intuition and other stuff
Yeah,
being
absolutely.
embodied. And
Yes.
this is a lot of what I do in my work, you know. So, you know, I'm now 55, 40 years later, and still loving that, learning new things. I'm just learning some new stuff. But it, for me, it always goes back to nature. So your nature of yourself and your body, your environment, your home, and what's possible and what's in the way. And, you know, just the beauty of that kind of work, you know, of having been taught so young by my dad, and listening. So listening on the level of what's happening here and what's available there. So bringing your senses together in a way that's very normal and grounded, but we're taught is weird or out there, or, you know, whatever. It's just been just amazing, and still, you know, evolves and evolves. And we have the down bits, you know, we get stuck in
Yeah.
life. Makes it sound like, oh my God, Marcia, your life is also wonderful. No,
No, of
sometimes
course not.
it's
Of course not. Yes, of course not. But you know, it's when you it's how you look at life. And I know there's that funny saying that says when life throws you lemons, make lemonade, but it's absolutely true. You've just got to try and hold on to and see the beauty of the world as much as possible. And, you know, recognize the darkness, and you've got to deal with some of that because that's real life. You know, reality is like you talked about it before, didn't you? The duality, right? But I think you were very lucky that you had, you know, a mother who was a bit of a trailblazer. One of my questions is, do you see yourself as a bit of a trailblazer? But I think you had a really great mentor, didn't you, in your mom, that she
But also in other family members as well. So, you know, my granddad was, you know, the Victory Garden. So I remember with my granddad sitting and talking to him um about, you know, again, this groundedness, you know, so do your chores and then you get to do this. So he was a steel worker throughout the war, wasn't allowed to go to war, was a steel foreman. And incredible at looking at, these are your values, this is where you want to be, and this is also what's possible. So I came from a family, now when I look back, that push through boundaries. I mean, my older brother races motorbikes all the way through and now manages teams, what my other brothers are doing. And you can see that dance between not settling, oh, I'm just going to be in a 9 to 5 job and not be happy, and following your passion and your dreams, or at least what you want in life. You know, all of my family in different ways have created careers and lives that allow them to be themselves,
Well,
you
that's right,
know.
because you talked about your mom having, you know, had 3 jobs, but she created a schedule where, you know, those 3 jobs allowed her to be with the children, to be with you, because that's what she wanted. So she didn't let life dictate to her anything. She just, you know, she made the schedule. And I think that's the really nice thing about, entrepreneurship. Instead of working the 9 to 5, you know, yes, nothing's easy. But there is joy in it because you do the work that you love when you want to do it. You make your schedule, and I think that's, even if it's part time, because I know that you work. You've sort of come out of business, haven't you? Had your own. You were doing all of that, and then you sort of went into working with the female inmates. But it's all part of the. You know, it's all still suits you, right? It's what you love to do, and it doesn't interfere with your life, or does it?
Well, I think what happens is, you know, nature or horse riding or gardening or whatever it is, there's seasons and elements. So in my work life, I've always had that I'm doing clients, I'm doing workshops and teaching, and then something completely different. I'm a systems person, so often I'm an administrator or a PA or something else that gives me some time out, because sometimes with energy work and intuitive work, you don't want to do it. Life's in the way, or you're burnt out, because no matter what you try and do to avoid burnout, there's going to be periods of it.
Yeah.
And so I was in a place where, things were really good. I was working in the community. I was doing a lot of things, but, I had some heartbreak. There was a lot of things that had gone on. Parents had died, lost babies, like there was life was busy life in, as I've heard the saying recently.
That's funny.
And so what had started to happen is I'd stopped doing some of the things that I'd loved. And it's a bit like a damp rain, when you're in Derbyshire and the damp rain comes in, the fog, and suddenly you're like, oh my God. So what happened was, like my best friend died, like there was a load of stuff. So I settled for the first time ever into full-time employment. And it was still what I loved. I was working in Holloway's women's prison, and community. And again, interestingly, I'd taken time out because my best friend had died for a year. As an entrepreneur, I just decided my best friend's died. There's a lot of things gone on. I'm taking time out for me to deal with how I was. So for a year, I didn't do a lot. I wasn't doing my business. I just felt I wanted to be with me and reassess. I was looking after my landlady. And then you get to a point as an entrepreneur or as a person, your savings have gone and it's time to get back into it. And so I went for an interview and I was late, and the person knew me by reputation, actually, of teaching. And she said, you've got 5 minutes left. And I said, okay, fine. Did my teaching bit. And she said, what's your greatest quality? And I said, I'm pretty unflappable. That's pretty much, where I'm at. I'll do whatever life does. So that's how I ended up working in Holloway Women's Prison back in the day, which is still one of my favorite jobs, and working in the community as well. And so this wonderful world where in a corporate world, I was allowed to be myself. So in the community, I was running healing workshops, I was running natural stuff. So everything that I was in a corporate world was being accepted. The same in Holloway, I was teaching qualifications. But when you're meant to be an entrepreneur, or you're meant to be a pioneer or a trailblazer, you can't stick in a corporate job that is too rigid. So the first managers I had were like me. They encouraged that spirit of me. Yeah, what workshops are you doing in the community? Yep, that's great. So the results that I was getting were phenomenal. This project was failing. So can you imagine? Corporate job, community project failing. 14 weeks they've got left, and the funding is going to get pulled. So it's major. So I went in and I said, okay, I've been working in Holloway. I was a community tutor. Okay, I'll run the project. Let's go for it. So I'm using all my intuition. I'm connecting to the angels and guides of Camden. I'm using my intuitive skills, but also that nous that said, I've got to get so many learners. So mentally, I was like, okay, I'll go into the cafes and look for the carers and the old people, because my heart wants people to learn and be part of the community. But also I had this agenda of get the numbers in. So fantastic. So in 14 weeks, me and my team took this from where there was 26% success to 120%, like 900 learners. So doing henna, healing, massage, English, maths, we just all came together in our essence and our spirits and ourselves, because there was nothing to lose. The project was done anyway. And so we did the most incredible things. So that was amazing. Then the management changed. And then the manager that came in was, no, you can't do it like that. And some other things that happened. And it really broke my heart, Beth, because being myself and being accepted and doing something that I really, really loved and was serving people And
Yeah.
then you've got a manager that comes in and starts criticizing. And this is what we were talking earlier about, the duality, is when you've got to be working on your own stuff all of the time as well. So what happened for me is all the stuff about not being confident and really trying to help people, where sometimes, being too codependent, for example. So I had this manager that ended up getting me so that I had to leave the project, broke my heart.
That
And
is
so,
a shame, isn't it? Because you turn something around, but it's
yeah,
just different visions, isn't it? People, you've got somebody that's got this amazing, colourful vision, another one that's got tunnel vision, but I can't, it's amazing to me how, that you turned that whole project around and it was doing really well and probably could have been more successful. Why would somebody come in and put I guess it's just the universe's plan, right? Because obviously you are just meant to move on.
well, this is it, but also it highlights for me as an entrepreneur and, as a person, it highlights what's unresolved and what's kind of noisier in your system, and so that low self-esteem, some of those things. And so, which is why I think it's important on your podcast, because, I had a very successful business. I was teaching in South Africa, America, high level clientels, it was crazy. The money that even in the 90s, I was being paid ridiculous, like £170 an hour back in the day. Do you know what I mean? Long, long term. But then when you start to go into a place where you're letting the environment define your skills, and you start, particularly as a woman, oh, okay, I won't be that bright, or I'll hide my intuition a little bit, or I'll do this at the meeting, and just that little dimming, and then that's what causes the problems
Yeah.
in reality, because you're not yourself anymore. What you were doing that was so successful was almost like a dirty secret. Don't talk about intuition, and don't talk about this, and all of the stuff that I'd always been doing, the community project. But in reality, what I know as I look back now at a very painful time was my entrepreneurial spirit then was going, right. And so for me, an entrepreneur, for me personally, is not only looking at what the needs are and being of service, but bringing your skills and being paid, and paid
Absolutely.
well.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
that's where I went off track. So instead of going, wow, I'm an amazing troubleshooter, let me now go into other businesses and do this, because that's how I work with body work and energy work, is the new skills come in and I move it. I went for safety. So I was being paid quite well, regular wage, in a job I loved,
Yeah.
in a place that I loved. It was easier, hard because lots of extra hours you weren't being paid for, but it was safe. It was secure. It filled a lot of needs. It also put me in a comfort zone where no longer was I out in the world as the intuitive person or whatever. It was softer. So, and that's where it kind of really went down. And so instead
Right.
of then, so, moving out of that project quite messily, not in a great way at all, with management, I was basically made redundant. But it was I loved the building, I loved the college, everything about it. So it was a real messy breakup, divorce. And then instead of, which is what I was saying about your entrepreneurs and stuff, because entrepreneurs, as a pioneer and a trailblazer, you're going to be a phoenix. So you're going to burn and you start again. And what happened in that period of my life, which was a few years ago, is I took it really personally. I was really upset. I was heartbroken by what went on. And instead of then just going, okay, that really hurt, and now let me take those troubleshooting skills elsewhere, or let me go back to the entrepreneurs that I used to work with and all of that. I took it so personally. I was hurt. I lost all my confidence, and I withdrew into myself So instead of having the vibrant and very successful business that I'd had, that's how you and I met, Beth. I started, giving my skills for free. So leading
Right.
workshops for other people or doing intuitive tunings that, just like you said, I gave you one bit and then you actualized it.
Yeah.
So the income stopped because instead of owning who I was completely and the impact and results that I had, and also my history. I was
Yeah.
the person that would be invited on tour with Kylie and Robbie to do their energy work. And, you know, I forgot who I was, what my successes were. And I thought, oh, I'm the person that's being made redundant out of this project and had my heart broken. So for a few years, that's what I did. And so,
But I think that happens, Marcia, right? That does happen, in the 9 to 5
yeah,
women, we just sort of pigeonholed, really. I mean, I've heard all sorts of horror stories. I've had my own, and obviously you went through a bad divorce with your, it is it's like a grieving process, isn't it? But when you come out of something like that, it is, you feel jaded, you feel
yeah,
lost, you feel, and like you said, you went into it in the first place because because it was safe.
yeah.
And that's a big thing. I mean, we need to, as human beings, we need to feel safe. Your body needs to feel safe. And when it doesn't, you start taking risks, which you have to do as an entrepreneur, right?
Absolutely.
You have to take those risks. And sometimes, and you have to, align your body with whatever's going on and feel into it. Intuition plays a big part as an entrepreneur, because you have to really feel into the risk that you're taking. Which one? Sometimes you have lots of choices, right? And you're giving a lot of energy. You can't give your energy to everything. You have to sort of hone in to what what you want to do. But it's the confidence, I think, for most women. It's the safety, and can I really do that? Am I really capable of doing that if I leave my 9 to 5, right?
And I think also, the difference between being safe and employed, which there's nothing wrong with, it's what, and the same with an entrepreneur, it's like, it's what you're doing in that world. So the corporate job, was fantastic when it harnessed my natural skills and I
Yes.
loved it. But
Yes.
when the change happened with the managers, I should have gone, okay, it's time for me to go. And what I did is I did the safety and security and stayed and tried to morph into their expectations rather than going, this has been fantastic, either this or it's time for me to go. And with being an entrepreneur and even a woman, we are constantly creative. And you're either creative, taking it personally and bowing down, or you are rising and changing and evolving. So, that whole taking the risk. So being an entrepreneur, as well as a nature person, a sports person, it's on that edge all of the time in a wonderful way. And you can fall off the fence either which way you wanted.
Yeah.
So, I read your fantastic questions. And so I started working in another women's prison and got to one of my patterns. So after this heartbreak of a job, took time out, studied a lot, traveled a lot, kind of did my thing, spent all my savings, and then thought, I've got time for a job. So, and I wasn't feeling to go out and do my own workshops. I'd really lost my confidence. So I was doing a lot of stuff for free, a lot of in the background with people, but I wasn't claiming my place, even with the contacts that knew me from a long time ago that are very well known. And so, I went and got another job in a women's prison because I loved prison education, giving women qualifications and what I learned for myself. Women's crime and prison is not what people think. I challenge anyone to tell me they have not done something that would put them in prison. And so far, I've worked in prisons for 10 years. I've never found anyone yet. So hit me up. I will say this will send you to prison. And So I went into this job and I was not feeling great. I didn't feel like I'd done a great interview, but it was like make or break, time to get some money in. And the call to do my own stuff, I ignored it. No, I just want to go into a job. I just need some money. And but talking about, how you're in the wrong place, my manager, who I adore, still in the same place. My first day at work, she said, "Oh, we didn't want to give you the job. We gave it to somebody else, but they didn't accept it." And if I'd
Nice.
had my entrepreneurial mode that I'm normally in and my fire mode, I would have said, "Thank you very much. This is not the place for me then." And but I was like, "Oh God." And then, just that whole journey of compromising
Yeah.
and just, and I've done incredible.
That was a nice welcome, wasn't it? Welcome to your first day at work. We really didn't want you, but the other person turned us down. So, I mean, talk about,
Yep.
not an alignment, right? Not in alignment at all, right?
Well, and learning what I learned in the prison, and I've just done some amazing courses, and through COVID, women prisoners have taught me so much about community and love and innovation and creativity and resilience and
Resilience, I was going to say,
all
is a big
sorts of
one,
stuff,
right? Yes, yeah.
and mental health and just like a whole load of things. And it's an incredible thing to work with people to get them their careers. And I've just done a beautiful course where, again, it's listening to the conversations, because I've just done an amazing course in the prison with hand reflexology, Indian head massage, and natural beauty and body scrubs, and seeing how that impacts mental health and drugs and just like all sorts of stuff, sleep, self-esteem. And the softness within that, because I wouldn't cope in prison. And the noise rising now, because I was like, oh, okay, I could do this, this, and this, safety, safety, safety. And my entrepreneurial voice was saying, oh, what you can do is create this as a course and take it into other prisons.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just going
Yeah.
to say, I bet what you're
Yeah.
doing now is just empowering you and inspiring you and motivating you to actually.
Well, it's the dance, Beth,
Right.
because there's part of me that goes, just hang in there. It's a job, northern working background, like, yeah. And there's part of me going, am I answering the call? Am I having breadcrumbs or am I having cake pieces, And so, that whole going back to what I love, and the gift of it, and as well as the impact, because I'm still in touch with clients from years ago, and some of them are very well known, they're in our field.
Right.
And seeing, the results of the sessions that I did 10, 15 years ago and where they go, as well as the now sessions. Because being an entrepreneur and an innovator and a leader and heart-centered and coach or whatever you are, even being a mum and everything else, life is a challenge. And so, you can have the messaging sorted, the website sorted, the podcast and everything, and that takes a toll on your energetics, particularly, and your body. So what I often notice with people like yourself is that the ideas are there, but the capacity, the framework in the energetics or the body is not allowed. So if I talk a little bit about what came up about your voice,
Yes.
that area of the throat chakra and stuff was quite blocked for you. So the part of my work is looking at what's possible and what's in the way and what's the vision, and then creating the systems for that. I think of it like train tracks. If there isn't a train track there, you can't get in there. You've got to go some other way. And so doing that in my own life, I'm in a real kind of crossroads. My landlady died, so who I've cared for like a grandma for 18 years I've been here, and it's this opportunity. And so the dance that rises up going, oh, go home, get a job, to do this, like save, 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 and what my friends are saying. And the truth of me that's listening to my intuition, following those things about clear up this, go back to the spiritual church, do that, and being able to hold that tempering of what the reality is, circumstances seem to be, where am I going to live? What am I going to do? And the vision of, well, I want joy and I want passion, and I really want to live that life that is fulfilled, and I'm not going to collapse like I have done in the past. And there's nothing wrong with collapsing. It's a part of life. It's the part
it is,
of,
isn't it? It's, like you said, it's just lifing.
I love that quote. I saw it the other day, and I was
lifing.
And it's just like the best quote. And so, the podcast,
it's about going with the flow. It's ups and downs, isn't it? You've just got to just roll with it, right?
Yeah, and I think, entrepreneurs, the reality of it's not talked about. So some days you've got to be a warrior. Sometimes you're on a wing and a prayer. Sometimes you're working 24 hours. Sometimes, you're off for 3 months. And for me, it's like being a samurai, and it goes back to being in the wilds of nature.
Right.
You think you're having a picnic, that cloud comes, there's snow in 2 hours. So do you move? What do you do? Do you sit there and go, well, screw it, I'll sit in the snow today because I actually don't care? Or do you go, wow, okay, the snow is coming, which means that the community's drives are going to be blocked. So I'm going home, I'm getting my wellies, I'm getting my coat, and I'm going to be ready, which is one skill of an entrepreneur, or before everybody else sees the snow clouds or the people in the know see it. Or am I going to do, well, actually today, I'm the entrepreneur who's sitting in the snow.
Today, Matthew, I think I'm going to be an entrepreneur.
But the cost of being an entrepreneur, as well as the brilliance and opportunity of it, is often not talked about. So, because we're human, and particularly as a woman, it's the gentleness as well as, those other things. Particularly a lot of the female entrepreneurs I know, you're multifaceted. I'm not just intuition, I'm not just body work, I work with financial clients, I work with like all sorts of stuff, and those trends keep changing. So at the moment, I'm working with people who are really in tough spots, physically as well as mentally, so if I don't know myself and my evolving skill sets and trends, and try to be what I was or what I'm known for, in a restrictive way, but I know my heart. So my world is nature, your home, your car, your business. I'm not doing anything different than when I was a child in some ways, but the skill set and the flow and the expression of it are constantly changing. Still working in communities, but I'm doing it differently. And if you don't know your core, whatever that is, so service for me, and you also don't know your traps. So once upon a time, I used to be too codependent. Let me rescue everybody. Let me help everybody.
It's what I call just unpeeling the layers, isn't it? You unpeel a layer, and then it's the inner healing work that you don't realize. I didn't realize when I became an entrepreneur, I've got to start healing me first. I didn't even, what's that all about, right? So
show me the money, not the wounds.
You have to go through that process first, right? And we're like onions. You got to peel a layer, and then you got to, oh God, there's another one. I've got to peel that layer. And it's also, you talked about, the who are you, and and wearing many hats as an entrepreneur and doing different things. I've also learned a real balance between the masculine and the feminine. I'm always been in my corporate world in the masculine, always doing, action. But then I've got to balance that as an entrepreneur, especially as in service. I've got to have the compassion and the empathy, which I do have, but it's just, it takes on the back burner all the time. in a regular job because you're just masculine, masculine, masculine. And don't get me wrong, there are times when you have to do that as an entrepreneur. You have to do social media. You have to, you have to go out there and you have to get the clients. You have to promote yourself. It's all, create the programs. It's all it's masculine. It's do.
Yeah.
And then you got the softer side, which is, I love to do my visualizing. I love to do my vision boards and create and walk in nature and, and listen to stories like this, on my podcast and all of that. And I love that feminine side. So it's been a real journey to find that balance.
And I think also applying it where it's needed. So, what I stopped doing is what's termed masculine. I'm not sure it is, but the pricing, the website, the structure that holds me as an entrepreneur went by the by. And so that framework, that masculine framework, which as an entrepreneur, we just want to do our skill set. And, we don't necessarily function well in certain areas. And as an entrepreneur, knowing to outsource that or learning to do it yourself rather than just avoiding it. So like, as I said, me going back to being out there as an entrepreneur, I never stopped.
Right.
What I didn't do is I didn't have the business frame. So, I'm always doing intuitive sessions with people, whether I was walking in my dog field the other day. But what I didn't have or haven't had properly back in position after a corporate job or an education, I work in education more so, was those supports that mean you can fly. There's that saying, isn't there? You need roots and wings,
Yes, absolutely. So, you've got to have the sail, you've got to have the structure in place.
Yeah.
And that's what, many of us, it's already in place when you're in the corporate world. And then suddenly as an entrepreneur, you go, oh my God, I need a sales system. What am I going to do? Right. So you need to put that in place as well. And it could be you could say that's the masculine energy, right? To put those things in place, things like websites and structures and, but they're necessary.
Absolutely.
They're necessary.
And I think this is what can cause, the burnout. And, one of the questions that we talked about is, working with other coaches and other mentors and things, and so not being afraid to reach out, because we can go, oh my God, I can't afford that. Because as an entrepreneur, you're often deciding where your resources are, money, time, availability. And this is where the intuitive or the kind of mastery of somebody who can see your blind spot. So, you and I talked and I said, you've got to get your voice out there. That's what it is. This is where the issue is. And so working with someone like yourself that's, looking about your passion and your joy and, the community and the business stuff that you've been doing for a long time, it's like, I was looking at some of your reels and I was like, oh God, I don't know how to do those. And like, do I want to do them? And everybody seems to be doing them. And so then I can go, it's all too much. Like, so that.
Yeah, it can be very overwhelming.
Yeah.
And it can be very overwhelming, but it is important, like you said, you find your tribe, I like to call it, it's always good to find people that are, that can support you in the right way. Don't know about you, but friends and family are all good, but they don't really understand the entrepreneurial journey unless they are entrepreneurs.
Mine are quite interesting in lots of ways to, I come from a family of entrepreneurs, and in some ways that was a hard thing because I was like, Tupperware through all, Amway through, whatever was always going on in my family in some way. And I'm not like that in some ways. So I didn't see my entrepreneurial skills in some of what my family was doing because that just wasn't me. Whereas my mum would do it naturally. So Tupperware, she was such a success because she was doing her values. She was about family. She was about being independent. She was about innovation. And so because she came from that energy, my big brother races, runs a motorbike team, he did that as a teenager. So the entrepreneurial skills that he brings in, of what he just didn't want to do, an ordinary job. So it was finding jobs that worked. And so his skill sets support his passion about, different motorbikes and communities. Incredible at community.
I think you're very lucky that you've got that, because I think most people don't have that. They don't have anybody that that they can, most people, friends or family would say, oh, don't leave your job, it's safe, it's it'll pay you bills. They'll because they don't understand that it's you've got this burning desire to do something, this passion to be of service, and you don't want to be in this restrictive box anymore, right? And these are the types of questions that I get from women. I don't know what to do, right? I don't how do I make the change, and how do I well, there are answers, but if you don't have anybody, it is important to find your tribe and find groups of people, reach out to network, find mentors, coaches, teachers. There's so much free stuff, and there's so much stuff online, right? And books, and do your research, educate yourself.
But also it's knowing your mentality, because the entrepreneurs in my family are different personalities to me.
Right.
I'm an introvert. So I really struggled of how do I be like them. My brother's very extroverted, and so was my mom. I'm not, and so I found, how do I do that really, really difficult. My brother and I both settled into jobs, and I was in further education and he was in management. He was a chef to start with. That's my other brother. But what we both took from our families was, yes, you can stay in a job to get some money for a short period of time, but you have to have a job that ticks your boxes. So my other brother's an incredible manager, because he gets to do people stuff. And since lockdown, he now gets to do hybrid. So he's at home 2 days a week, working or 3 days a week. So he's got more energy, because the introverted bit of him was getting burnt out seeing people all the day and commuting. So he's now built a life, and his wife, similar, they're now working from home a lot of the time, where they have a corporate job that's well paid, that they enjoy because it hits their values. Whereas you can be an entrepreneur and hate what you do because you're trapped and it's not really you, but you're an entrepreneur, or you're doing somebody else's system that's not you, and you can be trapped in a job. So
yes, that's true.
If we take it back to basics of earning money, so you can be an entrepreneur in your heart, and you've got a corporate job because you're moving out into sustaining that entrepreneurial business.
Well, that's the transition, isn't it?
Yeah. And sometimes you dip back into one or the other, or you can be somebody who's in a corporate job, like my nephew and my niece. So my nephew works for Jaguar, and my niece is a dentist, and both of them came from those moments. So with my nephew, very dyslexic, was working really hard at A levels, too hard. So him and his dad did up an old Beetle, because he'd worked out that he couldn't afford car insurance. But he documented that, and then that's how he got his job in Jaguar. He's 28 or something. Most amazing job, being flown all over the world, doing research and development. Just incredible, because he's following his passion, and that's what's so key,
Right. Yeah. I mean, well, I think that's following your passion, talking to the right people, finding your tribe,
mentorship.
mentorship, getting that right, getting the right advice for you, because like you said, not everybody's for you, and some are introverts, some are extroverts, you have to find the right people, you have to find your people.
That's why I'm so excited about your membership and your community that you're creating, Miss Taylor. I'm so excited to hear about it, and so lovely to be in the start of that, because your podcast is just incredible, the momentum. But hearing, listeners, I'm a little bit on the inside, so I've just been hearing what Beth's creating and the vision of her community. So you're going to want to be in on this. So keep listening and keep connecting, because you don't want to miss out. I've known Beth for a long time. You do not want to be missing out.
That's so sweet. Thank you. Thank you for mentioning that. Yes. So that's not a secret anymore, my listeners. No, it's not really. No, I've sort of tentatively mentioned it, but this podcast is creating a community, and I would like to further that. And so I'm just following the breadcrumbs and solidifying everything at the moment to get this, to maybe get a membership. But yes, thank you so much for that, Marcia. Thank you for joining us today. And I hope our listeners got some juicy golden nuggets of wisdom from you.
Yep. So I'd look forward to hearing from them, and they can find me as well. So
yes,
it'd be so nice to connect back in 3 months and see what we've both created and what your followers have created.
Yeah, that would be nice. Great. Very good. Thank you, Marcia. Thanks. Thanks for listening today. If you would like to join me in telling your story about how you are quietly quitting your career and how you've got 1 foot out of the 9-to-5 rat race, or if you are a woman who has a story about already leaving the professional world to follow your passion and can offer inspiring advice, then please message me to get yourself booked in on an episode just for you. If you have a question for me or would like to know more information about how I can support you in one of my passion programs, please message me on Instagram, Facebook, or visit my website. You can also grab your free copy of my workbook, Your Passion Journey Starts Here, by joining my online community. And don't forget to subscribe if you enjoy this podcast and share it with your friends. Until next time, this is Beth Taylor at the Passionate Pioneer Podcast, signing off.